Hey, thank you for coming and checking out Moose Peak. This is a video that I've been working on for a long time about a trip that my friend John and I took. John and I met as assistant scoutmasters. Together we've been on numerous backpacking and hiking and camping trips, but we'd never really done an adventure together. We usually do it with our scouts. We decided that we would take an adventure and go all the way to Iceland together and see if we could do the Laugavegur trail. With that being said, I just want to apologize for all my mispronunciations throughout the video. This was an amazing adventure, and we began planning it about a year in advance. This trip took us from Washington, D.C. We flew out of Dulles, and we flew on Play Airlines, an Icelandic airline, all the way to Iceland, to Reykjavik. We actually flew into Keflavik, and we took the sky bus from Keflavik airport into Reykjavik. And once in Reykjavik, we searched around and found a good place to eat, got some coffee. There wasn't a lot open at about 5 in the morning when we arrived, but soon enough we were able to get on our Trex bus, and we began heading up to the start point of Landmannalaugar to head out. The bus ride up was probably one of the most jarring experiences of our entire trip, and together we really just had to kind of grit through it. The driver was very good, but he drove like a rallycross driver and broke the suspension on the bus on the way up, and so John and I actually ended up standing riding the bus up to try and save our backs from all the pounding. The bus itself was really cool. It's just a gigantic overland bus with air suspension and everything, but again, our driver, he kind of treated it like a rallycross car. When we arrived, you can see in these pictures that the bus suspension is leaning way to the back. It actually exploded at some point during the drive. From there, we had to hike about a kilometer or so into the main camp of Landmannalaugar, and from there we were at the start of the Laugavegur trail. We checked in to the hut, and it was a really cool hut, really nice, and the weather wasn't so great, but as you can see, we were able to score a small space on the bottom shelf. John was pretty tired from our flight and decided to take a nap, but I decided that I would go and explore the area, and so I went over and did some relaxation time in the hot spring there. This is the terminus for the northbound folks, and I imagine that them coming up the trail and finishing at a hot spring is quite nice. I just enjoyed the hot spring and got out and then headed back and changed, and John and I took a couple of day hikes around the area before cooking our dinner and heading to bed early in the hut. We then began our next morning right around dawn. We started quite early, and we began the process of leaving from Landmannalaugar to Hrafntinnusker. I'm going to struggle pronouncing these things as I move along. This initial hike was quite interesting. It starts out in this volcanic field and moves up, and once you get about 2 or 3 kilometers outside of this area, it really opens up, and there's basically nobody around. So you can see that we're leaving camp, and there's all these different tents and overland vehicles, but once you get about a kilometer or 2 into this hike and you start going past some of the geothermal springs and a variety of other different features, it really just opens up and becomes just you and the trail, and it's really just a magical experience to get out there and to experience all of this. As we progressed, we came across a variety of different topographical features, including snowfields and a variety of other different things, and we alternated hiking, leading the hike. We had a map on our phone. We also had an emergency beacon and a Garmin inReach, mini inReach, moving forward. Throughout this video, I'll try and give some context to what's going on, but in the background I'm going to be playing some different music from different Icelandic, Nordic, and some other groups that hopefully will augment the awe and sense of wonder that both John and I felt as we hiked across this just absolutely stunning landscape. We used a variety of different cameras, from our iPhones to GoPros to Insta360s, so it's a variety of different types of things.
Life and death come near, in the shadow stands. Fragile moments here, nothing left to chance.
As you can see, the trail can be quite muddy at certain places and can be quite up and down. It basically, the entire trail is for the most part up and down, up and down, up and down. But there's nothing really overwhelmingly difficult about the trail. It's pretty easy in good weather to find your way, and there's no significant barriers or obstacles that we came across in any meaningful sense. This particular day's hike is really quite lovely and takes you across these fairly open expanses with very large views of glaciers and snowfields, and you can see in the distance green mountains. The volcanic terrain is also really cool, and there were several times where we came across large obsidian fields, and the obsidian fields were just really stunning. I mean, you get these huge blocks of obsidian coming out of this, just laying on the ground everywhere. It was really quite something. And as you can see, that most of the trail, particularly in the open areas, is marked with these trail marker posts. It should be noted that the trail can be very difficult in adverse weather conditions, and that a number of years ago, one young man from Israel did die on the trail as a result of getting caught in basically whiteout conditions. So knowing the daily weather, which is posted on the outside of each hut, is very important, and planning and preparing and carrying proper gear is very important as well. Both John and I travel with ultralight packs. He has an external frame ultralight pack, and I have an internal quasi-frame pack from Hyperlight. I will say that over the course of the trip, my pack stayed a bit drier than John's, but overall not a big deal. Both of us stayed warm and dry the entire time throughout the entire trip. Here you can see some of the geothermal vents coming out of the ground, and they do, believe it or not, actually mark off certain geothermal vents and try and let you know where not to step. But in general, it's good to be cautious around these, as they are potentially extremely dangerous. They're also really beautiful, and just coming across them is pretty cool. Now, one thing you'll notice throughout the video is that I don't include a lot of the audio associated with a lot of the video clips. This is primarily because there's a lot of wind noise associated with hiking in Iceland, and most days it was fairly windy. And you can see that throughout the video we are constantly either taking off or putting on our shells and keeping warm. And actually, this particular night when we arrive at Hrafntinnusker, we were both quite cold when we arrived as the weather deteriorated into a wintry mix of snow and rain and so forth. So we both put on our puffers as well. And this is a memorial to the young man Ido from Israel who died in adverse conditions on the trail. This is coming down into the hut system, Hrafntinnusker, and you can see that the hut is kind of on the edge of this downward slope of the mountain, and below it there's the campsites. The views coming into this hut were just absolutely stunning. When we arrived, we couldn't get into the hut quite yet, so we decided that we would drop our bags off on the porch, and we would do a day hike up to the top of the ridgeline next to it. It was really pretty, although it was starting to rain and snow and sleet quite a bit. We did enjoy going up there and taking a look back over where we'd come and looking out towards where we would be going. One of the things that's just really cool about the hike is the different topographical features and then the different flora that you see. I wouldn't say there's any fauna, but the flora. This is an ice cave near the hut. We're pretty careful and we kept our eyes up. This is what one of the huts looks like on the inside. This is actually one of the better ones. You get some spacing. It's really warm in there and everybody's super nice, and there's a place to get water and to warm up water. We had backpacking meals. This is in the evening time. You can see the conditions just become really quite untenable for walking and hiking. But the other things that just happen, it's just really lovely. This is the porch outside of the hut, and it is really nice. Each time I go between days, I'm going to have this topographical video that kind of shows you a process of from one hut to the next, and hopefully gives a little context on mileage and elevation gain. I would state that the overall elevation gain across the entire trip is pretty small. I think we only gain around 6,000 feet of elevation over 34 miles, not including side hikes. The hike from Hrafntinnusker to Ulftavan was absolutely stunning. Between the volcanic fields that began us all the way down into the valley that looks out. John and I started each day extremely early. Both of us woke up around 5 a.m. every day and got out. And it gave us the opportunity to see the sunrise coming across. But also, in general, the weather seemed to be, for the most part, better in the mornings than in the afternoons. Some of the hut managers actually said that was generally the case. Here you can see us coming out of Hrafntinnusker, and you can see that the tents section is actually quite intense. They're each encased in things of rocks, and the reason for this is that the wind there is just super powerful. And so if you're not inside one of these, the ability to kind of keep your tent standing securely is not something that's feasible. And again, you can see that this is the morning. It's the sun is coming over the edge of the the distant mountains, and we're beginning the process to go down the trail. And although it looks very flat, it's about to start going up and down quite a bit. This was probably my favorite day of the trek overall. Just the views and the expanses and being able to look down, and there's quite a bit of elevation loss over the course of this hike during this day, and it really kind of gave you the opportunity to see long distances ahead of you, which you might not see if you were going the opposite direction, because you'd constantly be gaining altitude rather than losing it. That being said, you are still going up and down, as you can see. I mean, we constantly go up and down these little bits of territory here. You end up crossing quite a number of small snowmelt fields, but you do also, as you'll see later, you do end up crossing some fairly sizable streams and rivers. I think both of us were equally fascinated by snow caves, and you do have to walk over quite a few of things like this. So being careful and cautious is always warranted. It's kind of hard to tell from the video and from the pictures, but the greens really just pop out of this volcanic landscape. And then combined with the blacks and the whites, and even the reds that you would see sometimes across some of the soil, just really quite profound in terms of the visual statement of the landscape that it makes as you make your way through this territory. Over the course of this day, I don't know that we passed maybe one or two people over the course of the entire day. I mean, that's, and with, I don't even think we saw anybody else. Here you can see one of the smaller glaciers off to the side, and you're just following the path through this just absolutely immaculate landscape. This is probably where it just becomes surreal, where you're coming out of this volcanic kind of higher plateau area and down towards Álftavatn, and you can see the lake kind of in the distance, and the greens just contrasted with the blacks, they just pop, and it's really quite intense and really beautiful. You can see that there's clouds on the horizon there, and those will become important later, not for us, but for the vast majority of people following us later in the day. They end up getting stuck in quite unfortunate weather conditions. Here's the first view of the Álftavatn huts as we start making our way down. And again, going this direction towards the coast from Landmannalaugar, you get a different view than if you would be going the opposite direction. I think generally we chose the right direction, although it's always nice to end up at a hot spring. There are a lot of overlanding roads and things throughout the hike, so it is important to have a good map and to really kind of keep that going. We didn't really have any problems But there were some times where it was, hey, there's a bunch of different trails or roads or other things crossing. Are we going the right way? So really having a good navigational instrument is important. And again, this is crossing one of the creeks on the way to Altavan. I can't stress how cold that water is. And if you're an overlanding enthusiast, man, the overlanding vehicles there are like Mad Max out of this world. They're just really cool. The Altavan huts are on this flat plain next to the lake. They're all elevated and off the ground, and they're just really cool. And you can see that the Icelandic flag is blowing like crazy. At the Altavan huts, there's this hike up to the left. You can see the ridge line on the left of the lake. We hiked up there and got caught in a pretty sizable, nice storm. It was pretty, but we got to come back down to the cafe at the Altavan huts and have some hot drinks. We stayed in this hut, and this room looks great, but we ended up getting a pair of father and son from Estonia, and man, I've lived next to firehouses and railroad tracks before, but those gentlemen, they snored something fierce. Again, just the overlanding vehicles, the terrain, the beauty of everything. The tent sites here are much more exposed. The wind is not quite as bad, but it was something. This is the topographical changes and the move from Altavan to Emstrur. There is another set of huts just beyond Altavan, which some people like to stay at, and the huts there are called Hrafntinnusker, and they're smaller, and they're in a valley next to a river. They're really pretty, but not quite as stunning as the Altavan ones. You can see that this little map here shows the crossing of the desert, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And this day was probably, I think John and I like this day the least of any of the days that we were on the trail. Not because the terrain or anything is hard or that there was any particular challenge, but rather that it was just a difficult weather day. We woke up again very early, right as the sun was coming up. We crossed over one of the feeder creeks into Altavan, and then began walking. And it was very pretty. Not to understate how pretty it is, but the weather conditions. I mean, it rained basically for the entire 5 hours of our hike. We did have to make several very, very cold river crossings, and when it's raining and you're crossing and you're keeping your shoes dry and stuff like that, it can be challenging and tiring. This is Hrafntinnusker, and I'm going to butcher that pronunciation, but once you get past this hut, you start edging across the beginnings of the Black Sand Desert. There are a few major rivers that they do have bridges over, and these bridges are actually crucial. Without these bridges, this would be basically unhikeable without a raft of some sort. These things are like rock solid. They're really nice, and it's amazing that they withstand all of the things that they have to withstand. Again, just the greens and the blacks. I mean, just vivid memories of this. This is another one of the river crossings we had to do on this day, and I say that, they don't look like too much, but man, do they hurt. They are so cold. This stretch, a lot of people talk about in the reviews that they like this stretch. It's not my favorite. It was just the weather was quite dreary and the flat black, and you couldn't see very far up the sides, in particular of the valley, and it was pretty blowing wind and cold, but we kept dry, and we had a good time. I would say that some of the people who followed us later in the day were not so lucky. One of our fellow trail hikers had her rain gear taken accidentally, and so she ended up having to stay and use a trash bag as her rain gear, and man, when she arrived at the next hut, she was cold. I will say that the Imstur hut was tiny, absolutely tiny, and when we got there, we had good conversations with everybody, but the sleeping situation in that hut was less than ideal. I ended up sleeping next to a woman who identified herself as a former porn star. She was really nice, but that was an interesting thing I had to explain to my wife when I got back home, that on these huts you're sleeping on mattresses that are literally touching one another, and so you're rolling over. I'd also say that the snoring and the smells in this particular hut, because of the bad weather, were accentuated more than perhaps might have otherwise been. This final day from Imstur to Porsmork was just phenomenal. I mean, the views of multiple glaciers, the transition from the previous day's black sands all the way down into Porsmork was just, I mean, absolutely stunning views. In the morning, we woke up early. We did a short hike up to a canyon. We couldn't really see anything. It was pouring rain. There was a group from the University of Florida there. They were miserable. They were without the proper gear. They were soaked. But generally, people were pretty kind, and we were able to stuff most people into the hut that day. When we left Imstur, we began the hike down and really just enjoyed hiking across this terrain with bridges and all sorts of things. The canyons that we'd cross over, the various creeks and rivers, and you can see the glaciers falling in the background, the volcanic typology and geology, just phenomenal. Again, like 90% of the day we're just kind of moving, taking our jackets on and off, and it was really stunning. On this day, we did actually see quite a few more people than we had on any of the other previous days on trail, despite leaving very early. We did leave a little bit later this day than on the previous days. One of the things that we interestingly came across was a tour group of trail runners, all wearing vests and beacons, and they were very nice, and it looked like they were in a race of some sort. We're not really quite sure. Here you can see some of the reds popping out. We did see, I would say, not every day, but 2 of the 3 days we saw rainbows. We also saw sheep on the first and last day of our time there, and these sheep were just, they were pretty cool. They just kind of stare at you and then go back to eating. Here you can see some of the glaciers. I'm not even going to try pronouncing their names. I'll put them in the description below. We did have one major river crossing on this day, and man, was it brutally cold. I mean, it just hurts going through those waters. But coming out the other side and walking back out, you warm up really quickly. And walking into Porsmork, you see the wildflowers and the green grass and the forest surrounding it. It's just absolutely stunning. And I would say that the hut at Porsmork is just phenomenal. Really, really good. And this is us at the final sign. We just finished the entire trail. We grabbed a beer. They had light alcoholic beers there. Had some candy. We didn't get on this bus. This is the same bus we'd take the next day. In the huts, you're not allowed to wear your shoes inside. So yeah, bring sandals or something if you're going to the huts. The kitchen and equipment there was great. They had this room with all the journals and trail journals of different people. I ran over to the volcano huts on the other side and got us some t-shirts, and then we both went over there and had dinner, and then we did a hike. We did a hike on that day all the way up to Hrafntinnusker, which is this picture right here. Absolutely stunning photos from the top of this particular hike. Very much encourage you to do it. I very much encourage you to go to the volcano huts for dinner, and just taking some small pictures of things that I saw along the way that were really cool. The tent sites here were actually really nice. The hut was great. There was actually a bunch of leftover food in the hut that we could eat. The next day we decided that we would hike over to another town on the other side called, what is it called? Let's see. Ooh, I can't find it. It was another town near Porsmork that was very nice, and we had a good time over there. It took a while to get across the river here, and it's called Porsmork. It has a hut, not a hut, but like a hotel kind of thing there. It also had a nice big restaurant. There were a ton of overlanding vehicles at that particular area. There was also a mountain bike race going on. I would say that the hike over there was pretty easy, other than crossing the river, which was, again, I've crossed a lot of streams and rivers, but crossing glacial fed rivers that are like literally right below the glaciers is that puts a tinkle in your toes, let's put it that way. The final big deep stretch is covered by this movable span of bridge that you can climb up and hike over. We both really appreciated that, not having to wade across the water, which was quite fast. And if you look down the valley, you see one of the big glaciers down there, and you get the breeze off that glacier. It's pretty cool. We're both wearing shorts, but I would say that it was probably in the 60s hiking around that day. But we felt very comfortable. Again, hiking through the water, man, it's just, I can't stress enough how cool it is. And we went out of our way to try and minimize the amount of time that we would be in that water. I will say you don't have any swelling of your feet once you go through that water. The overlanding community here is just amazing. The vehicles have really cool suspension lifts and all sorts of things. We did another side hike up the sides of the mountains here. I loved it a lot. John wasn't super thrilled. He thought the cliff sides were not safe, but we went slow. I will say that it was really cool that I went to a grocery store at the bus transfer and got a pack of Doritos Cool American. And then when we got back to Reykjavik, we just had a great time exploring, and before we went to our hotel and had dinner that night. And woke up very early the next morning to catch our flight back to the United States. Just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to watch our video. And if you have any questions about Iceland or about our trip, please feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my ability.